Hello, could we speak to you today about the River Kent?
Sure, yeah.
No. I wouldn't.
Well, you still see people doing that. I guess one of the shocks for me, shock is a good word, was when Storm Desmond came many years back, or 8 years ago or so, and the water that came up from the river wasn't pure water. It was foul water, and it damaged things and left grit in them and left dirt, and basically they were unusable after that. And that was a surprise. You think of rivers as being pure, and you think of the runoff here being very quick, but it's not always that way.
Really? Damn. It's not very good for the environment.
I suspect they weren't the only people. Specifically, no, I didn't know that it was United Euphrates and here, but I am fully aware that that is what happens, and sewage companies, water companies often saw these as just an extra part of a sewage system to be used in emergencies, and didn't really think about people having use of a river or wanting use of a river. And I say, you were asking about swimming before. No, I wouldn't now swim in the river, but you see many people who do, and on hot days and when the river's low. They don't do it when it's high.
I think people drop litter without even thinking about it. Some people, some people like myself are appalled at that, but there are a number of people who just don't think of the consequences of stuff, and perhaps that's education. And I think the other part of educating is what people put, into the sewage system itself. So, what people flush down the toilets regularly without thinking that it's actually going to put a strain on the sewage system because it all has to be filtered out. I would say posters by the river might be quite effective for people just dropping litter that finds its way into the water. But I would also say, things like leaflets in B&Bs and stuff like that about what people flush down the toilet would help as well. I worry about the whole host of wildlife, right from the sort of like the river flies, fish, right up to apex animals like kingfishers and herons and the otters that we know live along the river, and how that actually affects them. So I do worry about it. And because of that, I've volunteered to do some water testing at a site downriver from Kendal, just to try and help with monitoring the situation and how much difference the sewage is making. And we are actually picking up some levels, of nitrates and phosphates downstream from here.
Well, yeah, I've been fishing on the River Kent since I was a child, going on, not giving my age away, but 30 years or so now. And I remember as a young lad going down there with my dad, as a lot of people do. You're catching lots of brown trout, mainly. And I remember especially getting down towards like September, October time of year. I'd always go down to Force Falls, which is down near Sedgwick, where my auntie lived, and we watched the salmon jumping up the waterfalls. That was always like the sort of highlight for me as a young child, watching all the fish jumping. But then, as you do, I grew over and I stopped fishing for a while. I went away to college and things myself. Came back, and then I've been starting to fish again. Maybe nearly 8 years now. And I try to do the same, so I take my little son down the river occasionally. And I do still catch brown trout and the occasional salmon, which is always the aim of the game for me at the moment, salmon and sea trout. And I say I'm quite an active member of the Kent Angling Association, which own and run the majority of fishing in and around Kendal. Well, the fishing is definitely not what it used to be for various reasons. If nothing changes and it carries on as is, I don't know what the future holds, because at the end of the day, fish and natural river species, we're talking everything from the little crayfish, because I don't know if you're aware, but the River Kent itself is classed as a site of special scientific interest because it's a designated home for the native white claw crayfish and also the pearl mussel. There's a certain type of mussel that lives there. So so it should be kept to the highest standards because of these gradings. So even what they do now shouldn't really be happening. And you see, it's like little bullfish and the minnows, and everything's going to suffer if the habitat keeps deteriorating. And at some point, it won't be able to adapt, and there'll be nothing.
No, I don't. No, what that is.
No. I think I have, because I think I remember seeing a website and some reference to it. But no, I haven't looked in detail at it, so it hasn't. I know something exists to that effect, but I don't know anything about it.
So the Clean River campaign is we're all volunteers, and we come from communities all the way down the river, from Staveley, Burneyside and Kendal. Our aim is to protect the river, both for humans to be able to swim and to kayak and to enjoy it, but also, of course, for all the wildlife and the special ecology that we've got on our river. That's our ambition. One of the biggest achievements, I think, has been to coordinate a group of citizen scientists, and we fundraised to be able to do laboratory level testing of the river to find out what the sources of pollution were. And unfortunately, those results did prove that we do have a problem in the River Kent. It's been really interesting talking to local people who have made observations about the decline in fish stocks in the river. And obviously, we've got lots of different pressures on the biodiversity of the river for whatever reason, whether it's housing or new developments, etc. So I think there's a lot to be celebrated about the River Kent. We've got a very special river, but we do need to make sure that we keep an eye on maintaining the biodiversity. We now have been in quite positive discussions with United Utilities and other stakeholders along the river. And we have some funding that has been committed to improve some of the issues, some of the treatment works, sewage treatment works along the river. So we hope that in 5 years' time, when these treatment works have been upgraded and other improvements, we'll be able to go back and look at the levels of pollution in the river, and they will have improved. I'd like to think now, particularly through the work that we're doing and the other agencies like the South Cumbria Rivers Trust, Cumbria Wildlife Trust, that the river, attention on the river will maintain, and we will be looking at a river that is as good as or better than it is now. There's some hot spots of pollution along the river. There are other stretches that are fine, but if we can just deal with those hot spots, we should be able to preserve this as one of the most unique rivers in the area. I think if we don't keep an eye on it and tackle these sources of pollution, we'll just see the decline will continue. Like so many rivers around the country, when you get to a critical point, the system, the ecosystem will break down. So we're not at that point yet. I mean, as I said, I'm not a specialist, but I think that, there are from examples of other rivers around the country that are dying, basically. We've got to keep it alive. We've got to maintain those levels of fish stocks and all the plants and the birds and the other wildlife that maintains the whole ecosystem. I think people are more aware now as a result of the national interest in river pollution, but I think there's a long way to go. And if people would like to know more about what's going on and get involved with the Clean River campaign, we'd love to work with local people.
Particularly, no.
No. In fact, I've never lived anywhere but by a river all my life.
Well, no. So obviously, in the long history of Kendal as a town, it was all been built around the river, so it is intrinsic to the history of Kendal as a town. And I think it's then down to the people of Kendal to try and look after it the best we can.